All right, I think most of the folks are in. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our leadership roundtable on how to build high performance tech teams in a distributed environment. Now, building a high performance team is easier said than done, and no universal manual exists on how to accomplish this. In addition to already existing challenges, back in March, we all found ourselves participating in a sudden large-scale remote working experiment. Most of the organizations, both large and small, they plunged into it completely unprepared to deal with remote work. And one of their biggest fears was actually a loss of productivity. Almost 9 months later, we ask ourselves same questions. How do we drive high performance on highly distributed teams? How do we get work done while keeping the culture strong and not burning people out? Today, it is an honor for me to have Kane Grau, Jason Weiss, and Chad LaJoy on this panel, leaders who have each built high-performing teams and are currently leading totally remote distributed teams. I've known each of these leaders for many years and came to admire their ability to bring together diverse groups of individuals and develop them into cohesive and collaborative teams. And today, we have the opportunity to find out how they do it. Kane, can you please tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Marina. I appreciate you having me, Jason, and Chad on the call today, and look forward to hearing from Jason and Chad as well, and learning with the audience. So my name's Kane Grau. Currently the president of a Chicago-based company called Uptake, founded by Brad Keywell about 6 years ago. Prior to that, I held various different senior leadership roles, primarily in technology and products. So most notably, probably in Chicago, that most people have heard of, CTO of Cars.com, Apartments.com. And then I teamed up with Brad and Eric Lafalski in 2015 and created a company called Driven. And it was basically a data analytics company focused in the automotive wholesale space. We were fortunate to sell that to a company called Car Global in 2017, and I stayed on running basically the data analytics division for Car for 3 years. So recently joined Uptake. We've got about 250 people, and I've been there about 8 weeks. So very interesting timing in the sense of talking about building teams and reorganization. So I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Kane. Jason?
Yeah, Jason Weiss. I am the chief product officer for a company called VelocityEHS, which is a software company in the health and safety space, workplace safety space. We're about 500 people. I've got about 100 folks on the technology team. I run R&D as well as product as part of my role, and I've been doing technology for pretty much my whole life. I wanted to do this software development thing from about age 7. First time I saw the first great computer game that popped in front of me on an Apple IIe, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta make these. Obviously didn't get into game development, but I absolutely love what I do. My specialty is I come into companies and I help them get their technology straight, typically for acquisition. I work with private equity firms. They put me into roles where they expect 10 years down the road they're going to sell a company. And I've spent a lot of time in insurtech specifically, but this one's a little bit adjacent to that. I'm also looking forward to hearing from everybody on the panel, and I'm looking forward to a good conversation.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, definitely Chad LaJoy.
Hey everyone. As Marina said, my name is Chad LaJoy, and I currently work at Domino's as the Director of Application Architecture and Development for our next generation store systems. Basically, that means that it's my team's job to replace our existing in-store software with some newly written applications. Before Domino's, I worked mostly in higher ed and research at places like Virginia Tech and Georgetown, as well as the CDC and CERN. And while I'm at Domino's right now, the things that I'll talk about this hour, really my own views, and they come from my experience kind of across all of those different organizations that I've worked with.
Great. Well, we're lucky to have all three of you on the panel, gentlemen. Our goal today is to share leadership insights and practical strategies that can be used immediately to put our audience on a path to replicate success you all have seen. How to coach your next team leader. What tactics does each of our panelists employ in building and developing a high-performing team? We'll go over these and many other questions during the next hour. In addition to the questions that I ask, you can submit your own questions via the chat function. We'll address, we should have some time at the end of the panel to address them, and hopefully get to all of them. And with that, let's get it started. My first question, so the answer to what a high-performing team is seemed to lie on the surface. It's a team that gets things done quickly and efficiently. However, I learned that there is no one answer to this question, and there is so much more at play. And before we take a deep dive, I'd like to ask how each of you defines a high performance in a team. Kane, would love to start with you. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thanks, Marina. It's funny, I've had quite a few jobs in 25 years, but I could probably count on 2-3 fingers how many high performing teams I've actually worked for, and really did a pretty deep reflection on, what were the attributes of the high performing team? I could tell you everything you're going to read on Google, and this is what a true high performing team is, and give you the one word answers. But I really kind of want to think a little deeper on that. And I would say, like, if I were to think of 4 or 5 things of commonality across the high performing teams within these organizations, I would say it would be this. I would say number one, and most importantly, is we were all 1,000% aligned to the organizational goal, right? We agreed to what the organizational goal was, and we were aligned to it. 2 was nobody had an ego. There was no prima donnas. There were no bullies. Everything was sort of checked at the door every day. We were all basically, on the same playing field. We had our positions, but there was nobody better than the other. I would say we knew our roles, responsibilities. So like a pit crew in a race car team or a Navy SEAL team, everybody had their job, and you were depending on the other person to play their position and be there when you needed them. Communication, critically important. Clearly, effectively, have hard conversations. Nobody takes anything personal. And then I would say the last thing is I would say we just adapted quickly. Pivoting was basically a necessity, or is just assumed. And if work had to get thrown away, it had to get thrown away. But we failed fast. We adapted quickly. But I would just say those are like probably the bigger attributes that, thinking back of when I was working within high performing teams.
I guess I'd add, I think when it comes to those types of teams, but in a distributed environment, there really needs to be a recognition that everybody's schedule is just really out of whack right now, right? And I know that's an issue that we see right now, and so the communication style has had to change for us, right? It's no longer exclusively an immediate exchange, right? Because somebody may have to take care of a child at a particular point in time, or run some particular errand at some particular time. And so one of the things that our teams have had to get used to is, I may put a question out there. I may not hear back for an hour and a half, right? As somebody else's schedule just doesn't align with mine immediately. But I think as part of that trust that you were talking about there, Kane, is you have to trust that they're going to get back to you, that they're going to take that seriously, and deliver what you need from them.
In the spirit of living better through sports analogies, performance is a team sport. And, vamping on what you guys have said, I mean, the goal is trust. Everybody on the team, no matter what their role is, they have to know that the person next to them is going to do their job, and they have to trust that they're going to be expected and held to do their own job. And when you can create that environment culturally, that's when you get, the things that we call high performance. I mean, it looks like maximum delivery, maximum care, maximum quality, minimum friction, but the heart of it is that trust between the team members.
Thank you, Jason. I think Chad already started answering my next question. The first part of it is, what are the biggest challenges you encounter in building high performance teams, and how does this differ from normal times? Whoever wants to go first, please.
I'll start since I sort of touched on that already. I'll say one of the biggest things that hurt our teams, especially at the beginning of this, was the idea that we were going to return to normal at some point, right? Everybody was just sort of paused, waiting for, something to happen, right? And we are in normal, right? Like, this is going to be normal for some period of time. And once people kind of got over that mental hurdle, that definitely helped, right? And it started to clear up some of the other issues around distraction. So whether that was sort of self-inflicted distractions because of poor working spaces or things like that, or externally inflicted distractions where people would just ping you constantly and set up, dozens of meetings a day just to check in, just to, get status on this or what have you. Really letting go of the idea that right now is supposed to be behaving the same way that 12 months ago behaved, right? And it's just not true.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pile on. I mean, look, at the end of the day, like, I don't think anybody has this figured out. If they do, I want to talk to them, right? I mean, I think it's just strange times, right? And we're challenging, like, are we going back? Are we going to have offices? Are we hiring remotely now all over the United States, or maybe all over the world for that matter, right? So I think we're all trying to figure that out. I think, and again, I've only been with Uptake for 8 weeks, and I've never worked in a virtual environment. I mean, I've worked in a virtual environment in the sense of running a sales team, but not necessarily in the full day to day. And what I have really been honestly focused on is staying way more connected to the employees and dropping in on Slack or sending random emails of asking how people are doing out of the blue. The leadership team, we meet every single morning for 15 minutes. We do a stand-up. We meet every Monday for 2 hours and talk about the week and what our plans are and what do we have to get done and major roadblocks. I'll tell you, what scares me a little bit is, like, studies are showing that work from home is not healthy. Healthy in the sense of long periods of time working from home. Working from home in the old world, where you could go back to the office or it was a hybrid, very different. But if you look at burnout, if you actually look at retention studies within the millennial workforce in particular, it's very, very interesting. And so I think we have to, as leaders, be very, very in touch with our people more than ever from a retention perspective, and get creative. I mean, I did a happy hour last Wednesday night. I didn't know how to do it. I had no idea it was even going to work. I told them ahead of time, this is probably going to be a disaster or a failure. It ended up being really successful. I think it was, because I got some good feedback, but I think we're just trying new things to stay connected right now, and to keep these people interested, engaged, retained, involved, and feel like we're still back in the office.
And Gene, why do you think millennials are more affected than anybody else?
I think they're curious, and I think when they, it's funny because I've got a brother and sister millennials, so I've been asking them this question, and they're in the millennial sort of category, and so I don't want to stereotype and say all millennials, because I mean, it could be Gen X, it could be anybody, right? But the studies that I've been reading in particular was targeting millennials in the sense that, do they get more curious and say, well, if I'm going to work from home, do I need to work at Uptake? Could I go work at Netflix? Could I work at Google? Could I work at I can work anywhere I want in the world because I'm going to be working from my living room. It doesn't really matter. And so I just think we got to pay a little bit more attention to that and ensure that, we are staying engaged as leaders.
Thank you, Kane.
I think my biggest issue is, I spent most of my time doing management by walking around. It's really hard to walk around virtually. So, the lack of the personal contact, the lack of the ability to convey that personal touch. One of the practices I've always done my whole career is I am your last interview. I talk to everybody who's going to be hired on my team, and it's an in-person interview, and I get a lot out of it. A lot more about what's done in the meeting rather than what's said. And you lose a lot of that over a video screen. So I don't know. I think it's going to be really, really challenging as we start to try to grow our businesses, as the economic constraints start to relax, but the desire to stay in a remote model stays. I think that's going to be really challenging for folks to deal with. Talk about the ability to work anywhere in the world. Now you're competing with everybody, not just your Chicago folks or your local neighborhood development teams. And that's a new world for a lot of us. So I think it's going to be really challenging. I don't have all the answers. My thing I'm doing right now is just maximizing one-on-ones. As many skip levels as I can schedule in my calendar, I'm doing.
Agree. Yep.
We're getting a lot of really great questions from the audience, and I'll make sure we get to them in a few moments. Jason, let me actually continue on this. How do you ensure you attract the types of people who work well in a distributed environment?
For me, attraction is not as important as the filter we lay on top of them to make sure that that the right types of people make it through the screening process. I mean, the key things for building a distributed team, and I've had one for 7 years, so I actually have more experience than just the last year. Hiring professional adults, people who actually, they're self-starters, they do their own thing, they're used to it, they've delivered professionally consistently over a period of time. It's really hard to train a fresh out to do this stuff. I mean, they're certainly more embedded in the digital technologies, but they are not used to just getting up every morning and delivering the work necessarily. Number two is I'm hiring for desire, not talent as much. I want somebody who wants to get up in the morning and run at this stuff, that they demonstrate that desire. They have an urge to do more, to get as much done as they can. And I screen for that more than anything else, even more than talent. And then the last thing is word of mouth. When you build a good culture and you build a team that works well, your team will bring you your next set of talent. That is absolutely critical for building quickly and for getting the right people. And then once you've done that, you actually have to keep it. So there's the idea of trust but verify. What kind of tools can I put in place to make sure that those decisions I made when at the hiring point are the right ones? How do we make sure we have the right people? And so really managing your measurement systems within the development is really important. And then on top of that is fail fast. If somebody doesn't work, if somebody's not working, they got to be gone quick, because your one person can kill your team's culture. One person who doesn't do their job can kill it. It's a team sport. I'd reemphasize.
I keep getting great questions, and you just touched upon one of them. So I will go to that question in just a moment. But before we do, I know we have many technology executives in our audience today, and building a strong team is one of their top priorities, of course. Can you share your thoughts on the tactics each of you employs in building and developing a high-performing team? Chad, I'd like to start with you. I know that you have a proven track record of creating teams that are very sufficient, very high performing, and they excel and exceed expectations put forth by the senior leadership team. How do you do it? What are some of the specific tactics you employ?
Yeah, I guess I want to start off by saying I think a lot of this is going to be personal to the hiring manager and whatnot, right? Like there's certain traits that I have that because of them, I go out and I hire particular people. But I would echo what Jason said, right? I think that people value talent too much in some cases, right? Like if that is your number one and sometimes only hiring criteria, that's a problem. What I look for people is somebody that's going to fit into our culture, but isn't exactly like our culture, right? I want them bringing something new into that culture and, for lack of a better term, kind of spicing things up a little bit, right? I look for people who are deeply interested in learning new things. In the work that we do, we're always encountering just brand new problems, right? And I really want somebody that's going to feel comfortable kind of digging in to that. I look for somebody who demonstrates a lot of empathy towards other folks. I think that's kind of a cornerstone to good communication, good teamwork, and I look. And I don't know how to describe this better than I look for somebody who looks like they're having fun, right? Who just looks like they really enjoy the work that they're doing, right? I've certainly interviewed people who almost seem morose at the idea of doing the job that they're currently interviewing for, right? And that's not a person that I want on the team.
I'll pick up. I think the tactics themselves, I think, come down to probably 3 or 4 things. I would say number 1 is vision. Is my vision clear? And I'm going to say this is outside technology. I'm going to probably just say this is at a company level. But is my vision clear? Does my team understand? Does my team buy into it? Do I get excited when I'm promoting my vision? The way I promote it internally should be the way I promote it externally. It should feel very identical. I think the most important, and this sounds super easy, but I can't tell you the number of companies that just miss the mark on this, is what's the goal? Like, what are our company goals? What's the department goals? Do I have individual contributor goals? Can I actually show an employee line of sight of what they're working on to the department, to the company, and all the work they're working on? How does that affect really the end goal of the company? That's unbelievably important. I would say communication. I love transparency. I hate having the adult table and the kids table. I think it's total BS. I feel like if I get in front of the company, I want you to know the financials. I want you to know the risks. I want you to know the same things that are keeping me up at night. It should not be to the senior leadership team, and it should be to the company. So I operate on full transparency. Are there things that some employees shouldn't know? Equity, compensation, yeah. But like the core actual business components, no, everybody should know everything. And I'd say the last thing is just characteristic would be change. I mean, I carry my org chart with me in a notebook or on my iPad. I look at it like, I'm telling you, I look at it 3-4 times a day. I look at it like a chessboard. I look at who's outperforming, who's underperforming, what are my single points of failure, who are we not utilizing appropriately, what's my succession management plan for this person or this person? Are we being inclusive enough? Are we diverse enough? All of that. And I think as leaders, like, we should all be doing that. We should constantly be thinking about the organization. Change is good. You don't change to change, but change can be positive. We've all gone through change. I guarantee you that we've seen the benefits from it. So I like that as well.
Thank you, Kane. Jason, do you have anything to add?
I don't know. I mean, it's tactically, this is not easy, right? It's really about having a good process, about making sure that you adhere to it, about setting up an environment that creates what you're looking for in the team, and that you can't help but add folks. I saw a question in channel. I'm reading them on the side while you guys are writing them. There's a really good one about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I love that. Tactically, I'd say one of the most important things that you can do here is to make sure that you are open to as many viewpoints as humanly possible. And that means including, I loved that. I think it was Chad. I think mentioned that he was, that he's explicitly looking for people that have a different viewpoint, that bring something new to the table, and that's really key. You cannot live in an echo chamber and survive anything that we're in right now.
I noticed the same question, Jason. We actually have two people asking. So we have a question from Sumit Nandi. What role does diversity play for you in the context of high performance team? And then Andre Sugai echoes him as well. How important are diversity, equity, and inclusion in your high performing teams? Do you have any specific processes in place to make sure that these teams, these items are addressed in hiring and advancing members of these teams?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that we do is we actually do bias training for all hiring managers in our company, and I think that's brilliant. In other companies where I've not had that kind of level of training acumen within our HR team, I've emphasized over and over and over again in the hiring process that we don't care what people look like. We don't care what people, we want diversity of opinion. We want strength, but we want diversity of opinion. And the way you get that is by hiring people that look different, that sound different, that are different than you. And if you live in an echo chamber and you're not, the other thing is it's a vicious cycle. If you hire for this and you get people that are comfortable hiring for this, they will hire people who are comfortable hiring for this. It's self-fulfilling from a prophecy perspective. You're going to end up creating a cycle where you keep this feedback loop keeps getting better and better and better and more diverse than you think possible. And it's funny because I have never had teams that lack diversity. Every single team I've never done it with intent, but I've done basically by removing the idea that I'm going to hire the person who's most like me. That's like the worst thing you could do. And then understanding your own bias, taking the time to look and say, you know what? I have a tendency to think like this. I need to make sure that I check that when I see it, and being self-aware. I mean, it's a critical leadership attribute anyway. You have to know what you're thinking. You have to be able to hear that voice in your mind, which apparently science now says not everybody has. That freaked me out a lot. But you have to listen to that voice in your mind and what it's telling you, and be able to say, oh my God, I need to check that bias at the door when I'm looking at candidates, and then do it actively. And then create that culture within your team as well, where they're doing the same thing.
Jason, this biases training that you referred to, is it conducted internally, or do you have an external company coming in for this?
It's internally. We have it's actually an online class that we run. It's in the world where all training is remote because you can't do in-person trainings. It's actually something that I believe we purchased. So it's out there. I'm happy to share it with folks if they're interested.
This is great. Thank you.
Sorry. One of the things that, at least for us, has actually been a positive of COVID is once everybody had to work from home, it became a lot easier to look in new places for candidates, right? Our candidate pipeline was pretty homogenous, and now we're starting to get a lot more diversity in it because we can look in different places than what we had before, right? We can go look in more rural areas, for example, right? Or we can look in more ethnically diverse cities, right? It has helped a lot, right?
Keen, is there anything else you would like to add, or should we?
I think Jason, Chad did a great job covering it. I mean, I would just say the only maybe other thing is I think we're in a place in the world today where you know exclusive education or experience I don't think is a prerequisite anymore. It doesn't the university on the resume. I look at it, but you know, what you're coming in with from experience, what you've seen or what you've done in the past can sometimes outweigh the university name. So I think a lot of us have opened our minds to that now.
And anecdotally, the best sysadmin I've hired in the last 5 years did hair and makeup in New York for 20 years. Just saying.
I think you also hired a musician in the past.
Several, actually. Guitar chops were required for a while there.
True diversity. We have a question from John Fly. What is your strategy to help turn around an organization that has not paid attention to hiring the type of people you describe? Do you train up or manage people out and restaff?
I'll jump on it. Yes, both of those things as hard as you can. You know, it's really challenging. You know, walking into a role where you know you don't know anybody. You know you've just been brought in. The team is you're never brought in for no reason, right? There's always something that's broken when you come into a role like that, and you know you have to spend the time. You have to let everybody fly that's there if they can. You have to give them the opportunity to succeed, but quickly you're going to find that there are folks that are ready and willing and able to kind of take on what you're looking for, and there are also folks that are not. And failing those folks, changing the organization requires the message being sent by saying the people who are not doing what I'm looking for, they're going to be somewhere else, and the people that are doing what I'm looking for, they're going to be here and happy. And you have to send that message both ways, carrot and stick. Because if you don't, people question your commitment on it. And you know, does he really think that we need to be diverse in our hiring practices? Yeah, I do, and I'm going to require it, and you're gonna do it. And if you know the only people getting through your panel screening are 3 guys that look like you, we're gonna have a problem, because it's, you know, I'm then going to review your panel and say, well, gosh, I would have taken these 7 other people. Why'd you screen them out? And if you can't come up with a good reason, you know, it's not going to work for me. Again, it's about creating the environment that you're looking for. You know, hire great, shoot the jerk. That's it.
Love it.
You know, I think this is, you know, Kane had talked earlier about communication, and in these environments, I think it's critical that you'll feel like you're over communicating, but that you communicate your expectations, your ideas, your values, what Jason was just talking about, over and over and over again, right? And that you know, I think it's critically important that you make it clear to those people that they can come to you and raise sensitive issues, or that they can question you in some ways, right? That they can challenge you, hopefully constructively, but you know, bring up hard topics, right? But look, I've worked in teams, you know, where I've been brought in to fix things. It's really, if you're brought in specifically with that mindset, it's very easy to make snap decisions, and I think that's a mistake a lot of times. To what Jason said, you got to give people a chance, but you know, you cannot be afraid to say, look, that person has to go. They are not, you know, they are toxic to this team. They are not going to contribute what we need. They have to go.
Yeah, I mean, I completely support exactly what Chad said. I mean, and this was instilled in me a long time ago, is just this motion or notion of destroying bullies. There's no bullies allowed in the workplace. For all intents and purposes, no assholes allowed in the workplace. So, I mean, I've always just built a culture around that, and there's nobody bigger than the company. Everybody's replaceable at any given time, right? And including the CEO, which we've seen, you know, numerous times in the media and everything else. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's bigger than the business. And you know, Chad said something. I think it was Chad said something really interesting earlier around. It's an amazing number of organizations to protect people over the business, and you know, I think that shows at times immaturity in the leadership. I think that you've got to go in the mind the business is always bigger than one person, and if you let the one person affect the business, you won't have a business at the end of the day, right? So the business has to survive. And it's also, by the way, not to say, and I said this day one of Uptake, if I have to rate the employee or the customer, it's always the employee first. The employee always becomes before the customer, because I think that if we have happy, motivated employees, we'll have happy and motivated customers that'll come along the way.
Ian, I would like to ask you to respond to this question first. How do you build a cohesive culture within with a remote workforce when you don't see people in the office?
I am learning on this one quickly, trial by fire. And I don't have the magic wand on this one right now. I will tell you, and I think we said it earlier, I'm trying to do 5 to 7 one-on-ones per day. I'm not even asking for permission from my direct reports. I'm just essentially just scatter mapping all different types of departments, really no method to the madness of how I'm even doing it. But I've got 250 people to meet here, and I'm trying to see if I can do it all by the end of the year. And I got to tell you, and I don't know if this would have been different in the office, but it is unbelievably insightful of having a conversation where you're one-on-one in a Zoom session, and maybe you're just a little bit more engaged, or you're tied to. And what I'm learning, and people are not fearful to talk. They're telling me things that I don't necessarily I don't have to. They tell me everything that I should hear. I think the honesty, the transparency is really good. And the learnings have really helped me kind of pull together, I think, a better action plan for how I can build a better culture, which led me to build the happy hours. And I'm starting to do some coffee talks, and, yeah. And I'm talking to other leaders. I mean, that's the other thing, is I think we're all trying to talk to one another to learn about what works well and what doesn't work well for the employee.
Yeah, one of the things that I used to do when I was in places where we were actually physically co-located, and it relates to kind of what Jason was saying about managing by walking around. At the end of the day, I'd go and I'd walk around literally to everybody or to every team and just have a chat. Right? It wasn't necessarily about work; it was just a chat. And when we dispersed back in March, I kind of stopped doing that because just everything else happened, right? And I've been doing that more now. I've been bringing that back. My folks turn out to be really big board gamers, for example, right? They love tabletop games. We have channels in our IM of people just playing board games over lunch or in the evening or things like that, right? Or we have a couple card channels now where people are just playing card games, right? And yeah, we do the sort of electronic coffee breaks where people just post like, hey, I'm gonna go get coffee, right? And 3, 4, 5 people sort of join in and they have a coffee together and chat, right? And it's been it's been super nice. I wish we could do more. I'm still trying to think of more to do, but even just those things have been very, very beneficial for us.
Yeah, I love the idea of just jumping into channels where people forget that you're on the channel, in your messaging platform, and just commenting on something that was in the stream that they're like, oh wait, somebody's paying attention. That can create a little joy. I love the board gaming idea. We do some of that as well. We had a poker game at one point in time online. That was both wonderful and horrible. But yeah, I mean, there are so many resources out there online to do things and to kind of create that social aspect. I mean, you can't do it in a bar or at a coffee shop these days. So you got to have something. And it's amazing. Game playing actually creates kind of team building. For whatever reason, you pick a side, and even though you're beating on the guy against you, you're creating those stories that folks will tell each other about years after the fact. So I think it's really important to culture to kind of get that stuff in there. I love some of those ideas.
I agree. I love all the answers. We have a question from Amit Shah, and I think we covered it for the most part, but there's a specific twist to it. I completely agree that engagement is key in building great teams, and any other strategies besides quick connects, virtual happy hour, coffee breaks, especially team members in different time zones across the globe. We have nearshore, offshore, California, East Coast, West Coast. How do you deal with that?
Well, I'm a night person, so I have a team in Perth, Australia, and I will often be the one who pops into their channel and says good morning, when they're hopping on and I should be in bed. But it's absolutely critical that as a leader that you are visible to your team, and the easiest way to create that virtually is by popping in the work channels or in the play channels and just reminding people that you're there and reminding people that you're reading and watching and that you're interested in what they're interested in and create that common liking. I think that's the, at least so far, that's what I figured out to do. I don't have much more answer than that.
Yeah, Marina, we've been actually exploring this idea. We also have an office in Sydney, and we've been playing around with this idea of follow the sun development, right? So when we're sleeping, basically double the productivity. So could we expand the workforce in Australia and take advantage of that and have that as part of our strategy? So again, I think with this whole COVID thing, it's opening new ideas. It's obviously extremely detrimental to the in-house culture and the office space, but it's also, I think, as leaders, it's opening our eyes to maybe bigger, broader opportunities that we probably weren't looking at when we were just all stuck within the four walls of an office in Chicago.
Thank you, Kane. Let's move on to leadership development. And Kane, this is a question for you. What can be done to train and coach potential leader for a high performance team? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I want to divide this up into two things real quick. I think one really important is I'm going to speak specifically to tech because I kind of grew up in that world, and actually it's funny. I kind of went through this myself. It's amazing the number of organizations that pigeonhole a really high performing employee into management and not have the appropriate conversations with the person, whether they even want to go into management. And typically the reason that happens is because it's the limitation of the career pathing and the individual contributor route for an employee. And we actually just saw this at Uptake, where we had basically the developer got to a lead developer status, and that was the highest point he could go. Well, why not have a principal? Why not have a fellow type role? And so that's the things we started exploring. And my idea is like a fellow role should be basically in the level of a director, maybe a VP or a C level. They should be thought leaders. They should be writing white papers. They should be at the conferences representing Uptake, no differently than a C-level employee. So I just want to bring that up because there's a really interesting exercise called 9-box. If you can find it online, but it's basically how you can put individual contributors through a career path and leaders through a career path, and really sort of identify high performance people, regardless if they want to be in management or not. And I just want to make sure that that was clear to the audience, that you don't have to be in management to be a high performing contributor to an organization. I would say though, specific to leaders, I would say that it comes down to really a couple different things. One is communication. Can they communicate? How do they communicate? I think it's the most important attribute of any leader. The leaders that have motivated me have just been amazing communicators. They've painted the picture of the organization. They've put me in the picture. They showed me where how is it going to be an important part of that picture, but that all came, via communication. I would also say coaching. I mean, you as a leader cannot give the person everything that they need to be successful. You should be finding them mentors. You should be finding them people in the organization that can help them and get them more well-rounded. And the most important thing is if you find them a mentor, communicate with the mentor, because the mentor will actually tell you so many valuable things of what they're working on. I'm not talking about breaking confidentiality, but taking you through of things where you can actually help them also grow as a leader. And I'd say the last thing is, I would say goal setting. I mean, really good people want to be measured. They want to know what they're doing really well. Setting a goal and talking about it at the end of the year, that doesn't work. How do you make goals that are achievable? How do you stretch the person? How do you talk to them where it's really black and white? You're achieving or you're not achieving. And if you're not achieving, this is where I need to help you. Yeah, and you know what's amazing? 80% of most leaders are spending 20% of their time, or senior leaders focus 80% of their time with the bottom 20% of the organization. And I will tell you, like, we got to flip that. Like, we have to spend more of our time with our high performing people and get them the mentorship they need to excel in their career and ultimately benefit the organization.
This is great. Thank you, Kane. Chad, I'm off to you. How does your approach differ when you step into a role when you inherit the team versus when you have an opportunity to build it from the ground up?
When you inherit the team, there is this evaluation phase that you have to go through, right? We sort of talked about that before. And you really have to decide which of these people are going to stick around and which ones aren't, which ones can succeed with coaching, which ones are just naturally good in the areas that you're working, right? And if there are already people there, you work in some ways to form your culture around those people that are there, right? They are contributing to the formation of the culture. If you're starting from scratch, you have to be really, really clear. And I think Kane said this before, you have to be really clear on what it is that you want to get from the people that you are bringing in. What are your goals? What is the culture that you want to build? Because it's all on you at that point, right? If there's no other existing people, it's all on you to build that up. And so you have to be really careful with your first few hires and make sure that they are people that can help you set the tone for the rest of however big the team is going to be. Make sure that those people are going to be champions of the ideas, the culture, the processes in some cases that you want to see within that team.
Thank you, Chad. We keep getting questions from the audience. I don't think we're going to get to all of them, but we will follow up individually. A couple more questions when it comes to leadership. A question from Morgan Scott. Have you had blind spots in your leadership style and how you've built teams? If so, can you share what they were and how you overcame?
I can jump on this one. No, I'm perfect. I've been perfect from the start and ever thus. No, I would say my biggest blind spot when I first started leading teams was, developing realizing how important developing emotional intelligence was for myself. That was something where I was not aware. There was a whole class of literature that I'd never read. I'd never been introduced to it. I'd never really developed it. I had, everybody has some of it. Like you develop it over time. But that was the thing that I had to make a conscious effort to get better at. And my desire was driven by the fact that I had a mentor and a couple of leaders that just exemplified it and emphasized over and over again how important it was. And, finally I was like, okay, well, I got to go figure this out. And I probably read, 10, 20 books, took a couple classes on the subject. I mean, it was formative for me. And it was something that I was not good at, when I started down this path. When you're a lead developer, you don't have to really be empathetic as much. You should be. It helps you. But man, that's something you got to develop over time. And, to jump into a leadership role, yeah, you really, really do have to have that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would say, I think I learned, I love EQ, Jason. I think that's such a great one. I would also say, whether it's Myers-Briggs or DISC profile, I think style of communication, style of how you relate to your peers or to others, I think is also really important. I'm really partial to DISC, which is dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientious. And it's basically, you take it's sort of like Myers-Briggs. But what I had to start figuring out for myself was, well, how do I relate to this person, or why am I not the detail-oriented person, and should I be? But that just wasn't. That's not how I'm wired. I like to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. But what that really helped me understand was people that I need to hire more detail-oriented people. I needed the people in the details. I needed to respect the people that, loved Six Sigma and in the lean methodologies, because ultimately I didn't have that skill set. I didn't have that in my DNA to really want to go gravitate to. And so bringing people in that were very different than me, that had those characteristics or those types of attributes, was important. And I don't think I would have, that took a long time to learn, much like EQ and other things.
I think from my side, it's certainly the emotional intelligence, right? As a developer, that doesn't tend to be an area that we're really sort of pushed on usually. But for me, I think another area was doing a much better job at describing the real business impact of what we were doing, right? Like I could go to a developer and like, hey, we're going to do it this way because of this and this other technical reason, right? But really then drawing the line from that to, yeah, but this is what it really means for the business, right? This is how it impacts, in Domino's case, right? Like this is how it impacts somebody who's working in the store. This is how it impacts, when I was at Virginia Tech, this is how it really impacts instructors that are up in front of people teaching every day, right? I was not very good at that at first, and I still struggle with it sometimes even today. But it really helps the team align a lot better if they have some of that business background too.
I think we're gonna finish with one lightning round question. I wish we had more time to get to all the questions submitted by the audience. Great questions today. So here's a lightning round question for all of you. In 10 seconds or 10 words, what are the most critical traits you look for in a high performer?
All right, I'll go first. All right, self-awareness, empathy, give a hoot, I guess we're gonna say, and technical chops. That's it, and in order.
Love it. Thank you.
I'll go. I would say I would say effective communicator, very high achiever, and doesn't have to be work. It could actually be. I'm always actually partial to people like marathons, Boy Scouts. I could care less, but just very high achiever, very dedicated, disciplined, and I love when people tell me that they're gonna take my job.
Yeah, I'd concur with all that. Breadth of context, and a really good sight line to the goal, I think is also critically important.
All right, thank you. All right, I can't believe the way we've blown through the hour. I want to thank each of our panelists, Kane, Chad, Jason. It has been a pleasure. You gave us so much to think about in terms of both strategy and actionable ideas to transform our teams. And thank you again to all of our participants for your time and attention today. We especially appreciate the questions that were submitted, and we'll follow up individually to close the circle on those. If anyone has any follow-up questions for me or any of our panelists, email them to mperla, that is mperla @mojotrack.com. And we're gonna wrap here. That's a wrap. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks all.
Yeah. Bye.